The highly anticipated 2025 Mr. Olympia is over, and the Saturday finals concluded with Bob Cicherillo announcing a new Mr. Olympia champion, Derek Lunsford. And with this victory, Derek becomes the first multi-time Mr. Olympia champion since Big Ramy. And this might indicate to some people that the judges believe that he could be the next dominant champion in bodybuilding. But you know, the thing about this dominant champion idea that I've been holding on to the last few years is that we may not get that in this era. Yes, the judges crowned Derek as the Olympia champion this year, which we will get to later in the video, but last year he did finish in 3rd place. While this year, reigning Mr. Olympia champion Samson Dauda finished in 4th. And just when the fans thought the judges were done favoring shorter bodybuilders and the era of Hadi and Derek was going to be short-lived, we get a Derek Lunsford Olympia reign 2.0. A reign which only 2 days in is already under a ton of scrutiny. Scrutiny that I think is very fair when you consider the caliber of bodybuilders that he did beat out and how contested a lot of those poses were. I mentioned in a previous video that I did on Samson's victory in 2024 that the margin for error in this era is extremely slim. And I imagine that at this level it is really hard to bring your best physique every single year. But the variance in placings that we've been seeing among these Olympia champions is unprecedented. And I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to accept that it's gonna be a while before we see another Phil Heath. And that's perfectly okay. It's entirely possible that the judges and the IFBB do not want another standout gatekeeper. But it's also entirely possible that the judges don't even know what they want and are going based on vibes this year. But to go into a deeper analysis, let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the confusing at the 2025 Mr. Olympia. I can't talk about the good without talking about Urs Kalsinski. Ever since he made that transition to the Open, it was like, wow, he was meant to be here. Everybody's known about Urs's amazing shape and structure. The question was always, how would he look standing next to other open bodybuilders? And he held his own, especially in the finals. Now, I don't think anybody was expecting him to beat some serious names. He did not make the top 10, but his future in Open is very promising. And another competitor whose future is very promising who did make the top 10 is Good Vito. He was pretty impressive in the prejudging and he was even better in the finals. And again, he was another Olympia debutant who I don't think had a ton of expectations going in, but the package that he brought, in my opinion, was a pleasant surprise. And 2 other pleasant surprises for me were Brandon Curry and William Bonac. It feels like just yesterday these 2 guys were battling for the Olympia title in 2019. And they brought that unk energy to the Olympia. I didn't expect them to look bad by any means, but I was also pleasantly surprised by how impressive they still looked in their early 40s. Particularly Brandon Curry. Just when it looked like Brandon Curry had lost his legs at the 2024 Olympia, he got him back. The improvement in his legs from 24 to 25 on top of his conditioning, how crispy he was, how grainy he looked, was really great to see. And the 7th place finish against what was a really competitive lineup is nothing to scoff at. And I also couldn't scoff at Tony O'Burton. Dude knows how to come in conditioned, and he brought it at the 2025 Olympia. I love his full muscle bellies, I love his shape, and I love his energy. And I imagine if this guy can add some more muscle to his frame and keep that conditioning, he'll be sniffing the top 5 very soon. Now, my second to last good thing, or should I say great, at the 2025 Mr. Olympia is the conditioning of Hadi Chupin. Now, let's just keep it real. There is nobody in the IFBB that can get as conditioned as Hadi. Since his first Mr. Olympia, he's never placed worse than 4th. And that 4th place placing was when he wasn't at his sharpest. Man, you can honestly make a case for him pushing for the title every year. He's so complete, so consistent, and just a very well-rounded bodybuilder. And we saw that at the 2025 Mr. Olympia as soon as he came out in the prejudging. We were all thinking watching that live stream, is Hadi gonna be shredded again? And he was. This was simply Hadi at his best, and we will see more of that later on in the video. But when we talk about bodybuilders at their best, the person who embodied that the most was Andrew Jacked. He was the main storyline coming out of the 2025 Mr. Olympia to me. Bigger than Derek winning, bigger than Samson falling to 4th, it was Andrew Jacked. Last year at the athletes meeting prior to the 2024 Olympia, Andrew stood up and said that there would be a lot of heartbreaks. And while he didn't break a lot of hearts last year, he absolutely did this year. This was a conditioned and hard Andrew Jacked. Some of the biggest critiques on his physique and package, he largely fixed heading into the show. He had the mass, and that's never been a question, but the judges wanted more polish, they wanted more conditioning, they wanted him to be tighter, and they wanted better presentation. And out of which of those improvements that the judges wanted did he not deliver this year? The only knock that I noticed on Andrew was maybe a little more polish and flow with his presentation. I noticed there were some instances where he let his poses go a lot sooner than the other guys. He was constantly letting Derek and Hadi line step closer to the judges when he should have been trying to mog them. I really think he should have mogged them. I mean, it's Andrew jacked, but I do have to acknowledge that Steve Weinberger did yell at him for doing a little too much, but he did get his energy up and managed to get the crowd going a lot in the finals. But man, I was thinking it, the announcers were saying it, and I know some of you watching this video were thinking it too, and that was, please put him in the middle. And it took until the finals for them to at least give him that opportunity. But based on the package that he brought, based on the improvements that he made from last year to this year, based on the potential that he has in the future, man, Andrew is coming. And that's something that a lot of bodybuilding fans have been anticipating the last few years. And you know that a competitor has improved drastically when you can't stop looking at them in every single pose. It was Samson last year and it was Andrew this year. Now let's move on to the bad. Samson Dauda, the reigning Mr. Olympia champion, did get dethroned this year, and he didn't finish second, he didn't finish third, he dropped to fourth. And to me, him losing was a lot less surprising than where he ended up placing. Historically, it's just not very common to see a reigning champion fall that many placing, and the last time we saw it happen was in 2022 with Big Ramy. And I definitely don't think that Samson regressed in the same way that Big Ramy did. It just looks like this is going to be a much more common theme within this era of bodybuilding. When the margin for error is so slim and everybody is almost even in the judges' eyes, all it takes is coming a little bit off to go from first to fourth, and we saw that with Samson. Now, contrary to how some people felt, I think Samson looked a lot better in the pre-judging than he did in the finals. And Samson's strategy was to come in a lot leaner for this competition, but I think it did work against him. His trademark the last few years has been mass, fullness, density, thickness. The judges have been wanting that from him for years now, and when he finally started delivering it, they started rewarding him. So once he finally brought some conditioning to that massive package, I mean, he was undeniable last year. But in the pursuit of getting a lot sharper, I think Samson did compromise a little bit on size, and it did take away some of the wow factor that he's always had. He still has the most aesthetic shape in the open, hands down, and his flow is just unmatched. But as we saw, even starting in the prejudging, he started to fade a little bit. And we did see some water running off his back during the prejudging as well. And in the finals, he started off pretty strong and pretty sharp, and then continued to fade as well. Props to the judges for giving the champ an opportunity to retain his crown, but by the finals, I think it was pretty clear that Samson was out of the top two. But Samson is no stranger to adversity, and he will be back and he will be better. But who was not better or as good as a lot of people were expecting was Nick Walker. Everybody's been asking themselves what happened to Nick, and it served as everybody's annual reminder that you really have to temper expectations until you see these guys on stage the day of the show. But the hype for Nick this year didn't just come out of nowhere. He stunned at the Pittsburgh Pro and New York Pro this year. And in Pittsburgh in particular, he was really pushing Derek Lunsford. But when I see some of these guys having amazing starts to the year, I can't help but get a little bit nervous. It's hard enough to peak once, but to peak twice in a year is kind of a tall order. And for Nick Walker, it just looks like he peaked earlier in the year. I think his size was still on par, but his conditioning wasn't. And his color also wasn't as saturated as we're used to seeing. And I don't think that did him any favors either. And what also didn't do him any favors was Martin Fitzwater, because he was absolutely on, especially in the conditioning department. And when you combine the fact that Martin does have a nicer flow to his physique, it was trouble for Nick Walker from the prejudging. And don't get me wrong, placing lower than Martin Fitzwater is no knock at all, because he is an elite bodybuilder. But it's the expectation that Nick Walker had coming into this Olympia that does make his performance disappointing. He's been the heir apparent to the Olympia throne for what feels like years now, and I think a lot of his fans are starting to get a little impatient. But it's no question what Nick is clearly capable of. We saw him make a clear push for the title in 2022, where there were a lot of people who thought he should have placed higher. I mean, at one point he was that close to the top. But just this year, we've already seen excellence from Nick. So obviously he can do it again, we just need to see him do it at the Olympia. I mean, imagine the best version of Nick joining the best version of Andrew and Samson. What else could you want in terms of entertainment? Now, on to the confusing. The judges took way too long to give Andrew a chance to stand in the middle. The only time he really got the opportunity to was during the quarter turns, where they promptly switched him out for Hadi and moved him to the outside. And yet I couldn't help but continue looking at Andrew with every single shot. I'm obviously not a judge, so my opinion is largely ignorant, but it just feels like when you have somebody that big with that much mass that comes in that condition, the obvious choice is to put them in the middle and see what that looks like. And I was really hoping during the finals they would give him that opportunity, and they finally did. I absolutely lost my mind when they put Andrew in the middle right next to Samson, giving the two titans a chance to get after it. Now in hindsight, they were comparing them for 3rd and 4th place, but when you're watching it live, you don't know that for sure. But man, did Andrew look good standing in the middle. In fact, he looked pretty damn good in a lot of his shots. Derek owns the back double bicep, and yet Andrew was pushing him. Hadi owns the ab and thigh, and yet Andrew had a pretty good ab and thigh himself. All of that in a taller, fuller, bigger, and conditioned package. So it was just a bit confusing to me given how he looked that the judges didn't give him more of a chance to prove that he deserved to win. And I'm sure it's hard for the judges to give a guy who placed 5th the prior year a shot at winning the title, and I understand that they have a process that they have to go through and there are politics involved, but stranger things have happened. And to that point, let's move on to the next thing that confused me at the 2025 Olympia. The last time Derek beat Hadi, which was 2023, the argument for Derek winning was very strong. He objectively brought a very impressive package, it was very close, but you can see why they gave it to Derek. But in 2025, Hadi arguably brought his best conditioning we've seen to date. I'm talking little to no weaknesses. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, Hadi is super consistent, and when I think about the last time Derek beat him, he wasn't at his best. He wasn't as sharp as he was in 2022, again going back to that very slim margin for error. But I don't know from a total package perspective if Derek was actually better than he was in 2023, and better yet, I don't know that his argument for beating Hadi this year is as strong as it was in 2023. Derek looked good, he usually looks good, but Hadi was outstanding. Andrew was outstanding. I never thought in a million years that Hadi Chupin can come in that condition and lose, especially to competition that wasn't exactly stacking up to him. See, the last few times he's lost, and he's been a runner-up 3 consecutive years, the winner had objectively brought their best, and I don't know that that was Derek this year. Outside of that world-class back that he has, I don't know that there was a shot that Derek truly dominated the competition in. And when we look at the certain aspects of his physique that we expect major improvement from, like his midsection and his biceps, we didn't really see that this year. And I would even argue that he looked better at the Arnold. Typically, when you see competitors come in and just have that knockout physique, that wow factor, that package that just pops, they typically win. And we had 2 other competitors in the top 4 that brought that. And I feel like when you own a shot, when you own a pose, nobody else should take attention away from you when you're hitting that pose. And yet Andrew kept drawing my attention in the back double. Hadi was drawing my attention a lot more in some of those side poses. And I think again, he was just a lot sharper. And when we even go to some of those front poses, we do see Derek struggle a little more. And just like Samson, he does have a beautiful shape. That's something that's always been a trademark of Derek. He does have really nice quads, and his quads did look pretty good, but again, they were just good. Meanwhile, the guys standing beside him were outstanding. And by no means am I saying that Derek didn't look good, but I feel in this era with this level of competition, there should not be a question. He was not undeniable like he was in 2023. And while I have been giving the judges a ton of credit the last few years for making the right calls for the most part, this is one that is a bit of a head scratcher. And in my personal opinion, when we look at the pattern of behavior with the judges and how they judge these guys, Hadi, with the improvement that he made from last year, his winning Olympia package relative to 2025, I think did more than enough to actually win the title back. And I would even go as far as to say that Andrew Jack should have taken second. So my top 4 would have been Hadi, Andrew, Derek, and Samson. But like I say all the time, the Mr. Olympia is not just a physique. The title itself encompasses so much more. And to the judges in 2025, Derek's physique combined with the intangibles did warrant giving him the title back. So despite the critique, congratulations to Derek Lunsford. He did do a great job of using that platform the first time around to bring more eyes to bodybuilding, and I'm sure he'll do the same during his second reign. Now, the last confusing part of this year's Mr. Olympia, particularly in the men's open final, was the announcement of the winner. They did not have Hadi and Derek stand in the middle when they were going to announce who the winner was, like they did with every other division and like they do every single year. So I don't know what was going on there. I don't know if it was a mental lapse by Bob Ciccarello, maybe he forgot, but I thought that was a bit weird. Having them stand on opposite sides of the stage without having like a camera zoom on the two of them in a dramatic moment really takes away from the suspense of it all. Obviously not a big deal, but just another nitpick. But let me know what your main takeaways were from this year's Mr. Olympia. I'm Large Kofi. Thank you for watching.